Campaign. I say I've been a part of 7 presidential campaigns, but this is my first revolution.
There's a very high probability that Ron Paul will walk away with this. Nobody has more dedicated and passionate staff than Ron Paul.
What's refreshing is that Ron Paul's done it the old-fashioned way, with a consistent message and the best outreach operation in the state of Iowa.
There are so many heroes in this campaign that we've just been through. You have to pay for that in other campaigns, and you can't really pay for it. You can't buy it. Gary Howard, a great press secretary, a great leader, and James Barcia just never stopped working night and day, a real talent. And Debbie Hopper, boy, there's not enough money in the world to pay for someone like that to work on your staff. So many, Matt Collins, Brian Gentry, and Jed Coburn, and I can't begin to name all of them. John Tate's one of the best campaign managers I've ever seen operate, and Jesse Benton is pure genius. The delegate strategy that they came up with was a backup plan, and we went to the backup plan when we came real close in Iowa, but the young people really felt it, and we knew it was coming down to the wire. We knew that a lot of people didn't want us to win that.
The Ron Paul people are not going to like my saying this, but to a certain degree it will discredit the Iowa caucuses.
Somebody wants to take us back to the banking system that obtained before the Civil War. No, that person is not going to get the Republican nomination for president.
And Ron Paul, to me, is just a complete distraction.
What's missing in your comments about Mitt Romney?
But I think right now, anybody other than Ron Paul could beat Obama if the election were tomorrow.
You could see afterwards when the news media ignored that we came in a virtual tie with Michelle Bachmann. They ignored us. And when a comedian goes on national TV and the whole nation laughs because they know what he's joking about.
There's a top tier now of Bachmann and Perry and Romney, and you know, we haven't mentioned, and we should.
Thank you.
We haven't mentioned, and we should, Rick Santorum, who did really surprisingly well for the amount of money and resources he had.
Rick Santorum, he didn't get half of what Ron Paul got. He lost to the guy who lost so bad he dropped out of the race.
But we knew coming close wasn't good enough. And one of the young men there at the Iowa Cavalcade left the room. I saw tears in his eyes when the word came that we had come within just a few votes, but we'd come in second. And later I went into the restroom and he was throwing up. He was in a stall throwing up. That's how deeply felt and passionate these workers were in the campaign. They carried the world on their shoulders. They're taking on the whole establishment, trying to change the world. And Dimitri Kasari, I didn't mention him, but what tremendous work these people did.
This will make history.
This doesn't exist in any of the other campaigns.
We did over 200,000 calls in the last 4 days. Yeah! Call till 11 p.m. Where'd all this energy come from? I mean, how'd you maintain that energy all day? Ron Paul!
Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul just won Iowa. I know. First we told you that Romney won, then it was Santorum. Turns out Ron Paul won all along.
I want every single one of you to know. You did it. It's your win. You're the reason why.
Give yourselves a hand.
The greatest hero by far, there's no comparison, is Dr. Paul himself. It was when Ron Paul started talking about monetary policy, and I start seeing how monetary policy, just a slight tick in the Federal Reserve, can rob the poor We see it with the loss of the value of our home and our retirement and our IRAs. It's finally got our attention.
Finally, we're getting their attention because people are looking at the right place for the source of the problem. It's at the Fed. They create the bubbles.
So that's what triggered it for me. And it was once that Ron Paul had my attention, I was able to hear the rest of what he had to say.
That's another reason I'm supporting Ron Paul. He's talked about the Federal Reserve and ending the Federal Reserve.
I mean, Ron Paul's the guy who began the conversation about debt, deficit, high taxes, government intrusion. I say this with amazement, but it's becoming more and more clear that we live in the age of Ron Paul, Judge.
If you believe that the world will continue to take our dollars no matter what our debt is, Americans shouldn't have to work anymore because they would just print all the money. So if you love big government and think it can last forever, no, I can understand why you'd love the Fed.
Ron Paul is truly a man of integrity and consistency and honesty.
No, you're saying no compromise. So wasn't.
You think I should compromise on the First Amendment? On property rights, on your property rights? Should I sell your house because a businessman wants it and he can pay more taxes? Why don't you want somebody to stand on principle? Ron.
When I first went to Dr. Paul before the campaign started, he did not want to run for president. He knew that he was going to take on the whole establishment. It was at an age that most of us get to retire. I remember having a conversation with him where I said, don't run for president, just run for the Iowa Cavalcade this next summer. Just do your best for that. That's all you have to do. Just take that step. Of course, I knew if he took that step, knowing his nature, he'd go all the way, and he did. But he carried it because there was no one else that could carry it.
Good morning, Mr. Greenspan. I understand that you did not take my friendly advice last fall. I thought maybe you should look for other employment, but I see you kept your job.
But what would be wrong with talking about parallel currency, competing currencies? This is something that Hayek talked about.
First of all, good to see you again, Congressman Paul.
Frederick Hayek was fond of saying that the managed economy was in danger because it was based on a pretense of knowledge that certain things the economic planners don't know.
We are in a failure as a country now because we're trying to determine the price of money, and we shouldn't have individual central bankers determining the price of money, because when they do, they make mistakes because they're fallible and they're human. And as Hayek said, it's this pretense of knowledge that you think they're smart enough somehow to tell us what the price of money should be.
I started watching videos of him in the Senate, YouTube videos that I was passing to everybody. But here's someone who's second generation liberty. When he was a teenager, he knew things that I'm just now understanding and learning, and who took on the establishment very clearly, took on the establishment of the RNC and was fiercely fought against. Every effort was made to keep him out. And through this wonderful miracle of events, he got elected to the U.S. Senate. And we've never had a senator like him.
Rand Paul has earned more votes in a Republican primary, turned out more Republicans in a Republican primary in the history of Republican politics in Kentucky. This was Mitch McConnell's party. It's not Mitch McConnell's party. It's Rand Paul's party as far as what you look like tonight. Really quickly, who would have thought that Ron Paul would be the Republican presidential candidate with more influence on the Republican Party in 2010 than any of those other guys that we covered in 08?
So I see great things. I see someone who was raised at the table of Ron Paul and who heard from him every day as a child in a position to make a difference. And he's going to fight this battle and carry it on another generation.
No senator read the Patriot Act. It didn't go through the standard procedure. And look at what's happening now.
We need a counter-revolution back to some sanity. And Ron Paul and his family represents that. And Rand Paul has the best chance. He's a U.S. senator in power right now to help lead that counter-revolution.
Young people are following Congressman Paul, his message, and are looking for genuine truth and great and new ideas, revived ideas, constitutional ideas. They see the national debt They see these foreign wars. They see what's happening to their generation, and you know, they're not willing to put up with it.
And so what they need to do is prove to the Republican Party that that they are the loyal opposition in a sense, that they are the other big wing of the party.
At some point, politics will have to be used. Many people are very critical of those who practice the art of politics, but if Ron Paul hadn't taken a step as a candidate, I'd have never heard of him, and I'd have never learned any of this. I'd hate to see our ideas co-opted by other people who use politics and say, now we're going to audit the Fed, but we don't. Now we're going to end wars, but we don't. I'd rather see true believers gain that political power. And I look to these new heroes of the revolution. I look Mike Lee and, of course, Justin Amash and Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, all these great leaders of the future. And I hope they will keep going and keep saying and keep writing and not be discouraged by any of us, because they will have to make some hard decisions about how to get this message out and when to get this message out. Timing is everything in politics.